I used to work the night shift at a small town hotel just off a quiet highway in Pennsylvania. It was one of those places people only stayed at if they had to. Maybe their car broke down or they couldn't make it to their destination before midnight. A faded sign out front, flickering neon lights, and rooms that hadn't been updated since the 90s. It was boring, but easy. Most nights, I'd just sit behind the desk, scrolling on my phone or watching old horror movies on my laptop. Ironically, nothing ever happened until one night last winter. That was the night I realized something was seriously wrong with that building, and I'll never forget it. It was a Tuesday night, mid-January. Snow had been falling steadily since evening. Barely anyone was on the road. We only had 3 rooms occupied: an old couple in 106, a trucker in 204, and some business guy in 115 who checked in late and didn't say much. Around 2:30 in the morning, while sipping stale coffee, I started to hear this faint noise, like scratching. At first, I thought it was outside. The wind had been howling all night, but this sound was steady, repetitive, not like branches or snow shifting. It was deliberate. Scratch, pause, scratch again, and it was coming from right behind the front desk, inside the wall. I tapped the drywall. Maybe a raccoon had gotten in, or a rat. Old buildings get pests. But then it changed. The scratching stopped, and I heard whispering. It was so soft I thought I was imagining it. I even laughed it off. But the longer I stood there, the clearer it became. It was definitely whispering, too fast to make out the words, like someone talking in a panic. Then it stopped for a second, and I heard my name. I froze. I wasn't hallucinating. I wasn't dreaming. Someone or something inside the wall had whispered my name. Twice. I backed away from the desk, heart racing. I was alone. I hadn't had a single customer at the front desk for hours. The security office was just a few feet away, and it had a monitor with camera feeds from every hallway. I ran inside and rewound the footage, focusing on the hallway near the front desk. Nothing at first. But then at exactly 2:30 a.m., I saw it, a shadow. It didn't walk. It crawled on all fours, that slowly and jerkily, like it had broken limbs. It moved down the hallway without making a sound, and then it stopped. Right where I had been standing when I heard the whispering, and then it disappeared. Not walked away, not faded. It slid into the wall. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. I even checked other camera angles to see if it was some kind of glitch. But it was clear. Something had been in that hallway. Trying not to panic, I called my manager. Of course, he didn't answer. I debated calling the police, but what was I going to say? Hi, I think there's a crawling shadow creature living in our walls. So I did the stupid thing. I decided to check it out myself. I grabbed a flashlight from the supply room and went behind the desk. There's a small maintenance access panel there. I'd seen the handyman open it once. I unscrewed it, pulled it open, and shined the flashlight inside. It was just darkness. The crawl space was narrow. No way a person could fit in there comfortably. Just pipes, insulation, and darkness. I was about to close it when something cold rushed past my face like wind, but not from any vent. It smelled rotten, like mildew mixed with something worse, like death. And then I heard it again, the whispering, louder this time, directly in my ear. I slammed the panel shut and ran. I waited the rest of my shift in the lobby with all the lights on. Didn't go near the desk again. When my relief came in at 7 a.m., I didn't say a word. I just left. Called in sick for the next 3 days. When I finally worked up the nerve to go back, I asked the housekeeper, an older lady named Rosa, if she'd ever heard anything strange in the walls. She didn't even look surprised. She just said, "Oh, you heard it too?" I stared at her. "Heard what?" She shrugged. "The thing in the wall. Been here since before I started. They say a man died here back in the 70s, fell behind the drywall during construction, and wasn't found until weeks later. Some people think he never really left." I laughed, or tried to, but she was serious. After that, I noticed it more often, but only during the late shift, and always around 2:30. The scratching, the whispers, the shadow. One night, a guest came down, pale and shaking. He asked if we had raccoons in the walls. I said no. He told me he'd seen something crawl out of the vent in his bathroom, something with eyes that didn't reflect light. just stared at him and then disappeared back inside. That was the last straw. I quit the job the next morning. I didn't care about the 2-week notice. I didn't care about the paycheck. I just needed to get away from that place. That was over a year ago. The hotel's still open. I still drive past the exit sometimes, and every time I do, I feel that same cold chill, like something is watching from the woods or from the cracks in the concrete. And sometimes late at night, I still hear whispering in my dreams, always at 2:30 and always calling my name. If you liked that first story, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe. I'm new to this channel, and this is my first time trying something like this. Your support would mean the world to me. A true terror that should have stayed sealed. Ali had always loved silence, the kind you only get far from the chaos of cities. So when he found an old mansion for sale deep in the rural countryside, abandoned, cheap, and surrounded by silence, he saw it as a blessing. The villagers nearby didn't think so. "You're buying that place?" One man had said, stunned. "That house is cursed. People go in, they don't come out." Ali had laughed. Superstitions were just stories, or so he believed. The arrival. The mansion was enormous but worn down. Its roof sagged in places, the garden had turned to wild overgrowth, and the walls were stained with decades of mold and decay. Still, Ali saw potential. As he unpacked boxes, he noticed something strange about the hallway at the hulk of the house. The walls there felt wrong, too thick, as if something had been added or hidden. The first night, Ali barely slept. The house groaned with every gust of wind, but some sounds were harder to explain, like light footsteps pacing behind the walls, and what sounded like shallow breathing just behind the headboard of his bed. He told himself it was just the creaking of old wood in his imagination. The dream. On the second night, the dreams began. He saw a young woman, pale and bloodied, staring straight at him. Her mouth didn't move, but her voice echoed in his head. "I begged them. I screamed, but they bricked me in." Ali jolted awake, heart pounding. The room was cold, unnaturally cold. He pulled the blankets tighter and tried to calm himself. The next morning, he examined the hallway wall. A strange patch of brickwork stood out from the rest, newer, cleaner, as if someone had tried to hide it. He knocked on it. It echoed differently. Something was inside. Warnings and whispers. That afternoon, he asked an old shopkeeper in the village about the house. The man went pale. "They sealed her in," he said quietly. "She was pregnant. The man who owned the house claimed she was a curse, so he buried her in the wall, alive." "Lies," Ali muttered. "Just legends to scare outsiders." "Do you think she's just a legend?" the shopkeeper replied, "when she still whispers through the walls? The wall bleeds." That night, the dreams were worse. He saw the woman again, now screaming, her mouth sewn shut, blood pouring from her eyes. He woke to find scratch marks on his bedroom wall, deep, fresh ones. His fingernails were clean. He hadn't done it. The hallway smelled like rotting flesh. He made his decision. Breaking the seal, Ali brought a sledgehammer the next morning. He stood before the strange section of wall, heart racing. As he lifted the hammer, a whisper drifted through the bricks. "Stop, please, don't wake her." He hesitated, then swung. The wall cracked, and the smell hit him like a wave of death. Another strike, another, and then a human hand fell out, dry, gray, bony, but still twitching. Ali stumbled back. The wall shook. A scream erupted from within, loud, inhuman, filled with centuries of pain. Then she came out. The buried. Her face was unrecognizable, a tangle of skin and sewn lips, her limbs bent the wrong way. She crawled out of the hole, dragging bones behind her. Her eyes were hollow, yet locked onto Ali like a predator. He turned to run, but the hallway stretched. The doors vanished. The house changed, sealed him inside. The villagers heard his screams that night, inhuman, endless. By morning, the mansion stood silent again. The message. The police searched the house. No sign of Ali. Just a new patch of brick in the hallway. On it, fresh and wet, written in blood, one more buried. I've always been a night owl. Staying up late, scrolling through my phone or watching horror movies I swore didn't scare me. So when I moved into my own apartment for the first time, I was more excited than afraid. It was a small one-bedroom unit on the fourth floor of an old building in Chicago. Creaky wood floors, flickering hallway lights, ancient heating. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. The rent was low and the landlord didn't ask many questions. I signed the lease without thinking twice. I really wish I had. The first whisper. It started about 2 weeks after I moved in. One night I was lying in bed around 2 a.m. Everything was silent until I heard something. A whisper. Faint, muffled, coming from the air vent above my closet. I sat up and stared at it. At first, I thought it was just the wind rushing through the old ductwork, but then I heard it again, and this time it wasn't just noise, it was a voice. I see you. I froze. I stared at the vent for a long time, heart pounding. I even turned off the fan in the room, thinking maybe it was some weird echo. But the next night, it spoke again. It started speaking to me. Every night, the voice returned, low and raspy, like someone whispering from deep inside the metal ducts. Sometimes it called my name. Sometimes it said things like, "Don't turn around. You left the door unlocked. I like watching you sleep." I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was stress, but I was scared, really scared. I called the landlord. He brushed it off. "These old buildings make all kinds of noises," he said. "Could be a raccoon. I'll send someone to check." No one ever came. Sleep deprivation. I stopped sleeping. I began leaving lights on in every room, even the bathroom. I kept the bedroom door open, the closet shut, and I stuffed towels into the vent grills. Nothing worked. One night, I stayed up with a kitchen knife by my bed, just in case. At around 3:11 a.m., the whisper came again. But this time, it laughed. A low, wet giggle that made my skin crawl. Then I heard scraping, metal on metal, like something crawling inside the vent shafts. I wasn't imagining it anymore. Something was there. The recording, I set up my phone to record during the night. I placed it facing the vent while I tried to sleep. The next morning, I hesitantly watched the video. At 3:17 a.m., the room was still. Then, without warning, the vent cover trembled slightly. Then a hand, pale, skinny, with long fingers, slowly pressed out from behind the slats. It didn't push the cover off. It just touched it, held it, then pulled back in. And right before the video ended, the whisper came through again. "You're next. The police visit." I went straight to the police. I showed them the video. They sent 2 officers and a building inspector. They searched the vents, the attic, and even the space between the walls. Nothing. No sign of forced entry, they said. No animals. In a single flowing narrative, no parts, no breaks, perfect for narration in one go. It had been 2 weeks since Sarah's best friend Emily died in a car accident. Since that day, Sarah had changed completely. She barely spoke to anyone, stayed locked in her room most of the time, looking at old pictures and reading through their old messages. She missed Emily terribly. One cold winter night, while snow was falling quietly outside, Sarah sat on her bed wrapped in a blanket. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. She picked it up and her heart almost stopped. It was a message from Emily's number. The message said, "Why did you leave me?" Sarah's hand started shaking. This couldn't be real. Emily was dead. How could she send a message? Sarah typed back with trembling fingers, "Who is this?" But there was no reply. A few minutes later, another message came in. "You promised you'd never leave me." Sarah's eyes widened. That was something Emily used to say to her all the time. She felt cold all over. She put the phone down and took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Then the lights in her room flickered. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a photo. It was a picture of a grave, Emily's grave, but someone was standing next to it, a tall, dark figure with no face, just a smooth head and a wide, unnatural grin. Another message popped up. "It's cold here. It's dark. Come with me." Sarah screamed and backed away from the phone. She was breathing heavily. Suddenly, there was a soft tapping sound on her window. Her room was on the 2nd floor. No one should be able to reach it. She slowly walked to the window and looked out. There was nothing there. But as soon as she turned around, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was another photo, a picture of her own house, taken from outside her bedroom window. Then came another message, "Come outside." Against her better judgment, Sarah felt herself moving toward the front door. Everything was quiet. She stepped out into the freezing night. Snow covered the ground. But there, leading into the dark forest behind her house, were barefoot footprints, small like a girl's. She followed them slowly. As she walked deeper into the woods, the air grew colder, heavier. The trees around her creaked and groaned. Then she heard a faint giggle, soft, almost like a whisper. She turned and saw something move between the trees. It looked like a girl. Pale skin, wet hair, no shoes. It looked like Emily. "Emily?" Sarah called out. The girl turned slowly, but her face, it was stitched shut. Her eyes were empty. And then, without warning, she dropped to the ground and began crawling towards Sarah at a terrifying speed, her bones cracking with every movement. Sarah screamed and ran as fast as she could back to the house. When she slammed the door shut behind her, everything was silent. Her phone was on her bed again, glowing. But she had dropped it in the forest. How was it back in her room? She picked it up carefully. There was a new video message. She played it. It was a video of her sleeping in her bed, filmed from above. Then the camera tilted and showed something crawling on her ceiling, watching her as she slept. Suddenly, there was a loud bang from her closet. She turned, terrified. A faint voice whispered from inside the closet, "You left me first." The closet door slowly creaked open. There was nothing but darkness. Then a cold hand reached out and grabbed her ankle from the shadows. She screamed. The next morning, her parents found her room in a mess. The mirror was cracked. Books were on the floor. Sarah was gone. Her phone was lying near her bed. The screen was still on, showing one final message. "One down. Who's next?"